All right, so you're prepping for a Scrum Master interview in 2025. Smart move. We've got a whole stack of articles here all about Scrum and Agile. Looks like you're really doing your homework, but let's be honest, who has time to read everything? That's where this deep dive comes in. We've zeroed in on a guide. It's called Top 50 Plus Scrum Master Interview Questions 2025. We're going to pull out the must-know stuff and give you that extra edge.
Yeah, and what's interesting is this guide doesn't just focus on definitions. It really digs into the why behind Scrum, which is going to be key for you in the interview.
Okay, so let's just jump right into those Scrum fundamentals. Obviously, you need to be able to define Scrum, but I'm guessing there's more to it than just reciting the textbook definition.
Absolutely. Think about it this way. The interviewer wants to know that you understand the heart of Scrum, not just the mechanics. So when you talk about the roles, product owner, Scrum Master, and the Scrum team, focus on the dynamics between them. Highlight how they work together to deliver value each sprint.
Okay, that makes sense. This guide talks a lot about the Scrum team being self-organizing. What does that actually look like in practice?
Imagine a team that's empowered to make decisions, to figure out the best way to reach their goals. They're not waiting for someone to tell them what to do. They're collaborating, problem solving, and constantly learning. That's what sets Scrum apart from traditional top-down approaches.
Right, and that ties into the whole Agile philosophy too, right? I always get those two terms mixed up.
Yeah, it's a common confusion. Think of Agile as the guiding principle, a set of values focused on flexibility and responsiveness. Scrum is a concrete framework that puts those principles into action.
Okay, that's actually a really helpful way to look at it. It's like Agile is the blueprint, and Scrum is the construction crew actually building the house.
Exactly, and they're building that house brick by brick, sprint by sprint.
This guide actually mentions that Scrum teams can be up to 8 times more productive than traditional teams. That's a pretty impressive stat to drop in an interview.
Yeah, it speaks to the power of a well-executed Scrum process. But it all starts with the right tools. Which brings us to Scrum artifacts.
Right. I see this guide talks about the product backlog, sprint backlog, and product increment. I always thought a backlog was just a fancy word for a to-do list.
It's a bit more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
The product backlog is the master list of everything the product needs, prioritized by the product owner. Think of it as a living document
Right.
that evolves as the product does. The sprint backlog, on the other hand, is the team's focused to-do list for a specific sprint. It's derived from the product backlog and outlines the tasks needed to meet the sprint goal.
So the product backlog is the big picture, and the sprint backlog is the zoomed-in view of what we're tackling right now. What about the product increment? That's the actual output of the sprint, right?
Precisely. And it's not just a collection of completed tasks. It's a potentially shippable piece of the final product. This is where you start to see the tangible results of the Scrum process. The guide actually has a table comparing the product and sprint backlogs. I think you'll find it really helpful in understanding their distinct roles and how they feed into each other.
Okay, that's a great resource to have. But now,
Yeah.
let's get to the part that's probably top of mind for you, acing that Scrum Master interview.
This is where you really get to showcase your understanding of the Scrum Master role. It's not enough to just know the basic definition.
Right, you need to show them. You can walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
This guide emphasizes the concept of the Scrum Master as a servant leader. What do you think that means in practical terms?
I guess it means guiding and supporting the team without being a micromanager, removing roadblocks, facilitating communication, things like that.
You're on the right track. Think of a shepherd guiding their flock, as this guide suggests. The Scrum Master keeps the team moving in the right direction, ensuring a smooth and productive journey towards their goal.
I love that analogy. So it's about leadership through service, not authority.
Exactly. But there's another crucial aspect to the Scrum Master's role, facilitating those all-important Agile ceremonies and practices.
Right, that's where things like sprint planning, daily stand-ups, and retrospectives come in, right?
You got it. Each ceremony has a specific purpose,
Yeah.
and a good Scrum Master knows how to make them efficient and valuable.
What's the key to running effective Agile ceremonies? Is it all about sticking to the script?
Sticking to the time box is definitely important, as the guide mentions. But it's also about understanding the deeper purpose of each event. For instance, the daily stand-up isn't just about reporting what you did yesterday. It's about identifying obstacles, collaborating, and making sure everyone is moving in sync.
And I've also heard about this thing called Scrum of Scrums. Is that like Scrum for Scrum Masters?
Imagine you have multiple Scrum teams working on a large project. They need a way to coordinate right. That's where the Scrum of Scrums comes in. Think of it as a team of representatives from each Scrum team meeting regularly to discuss progress, dependencies, and roadblocks.
So it's a way to scale Scrum without losing that agility and transparency.
Exactly. And speaking of transparency, we can't forget about the definition of done. It ensures everyone is crystal clear on what done actually
And
means.
no more ambiguity about whether something is truly finished
Mm.
or just kinda finished.
And those three pillars of Scrum are key here: transparency, inspection, and adaptation.
So we're transparent about our progress, we inspect our work regularly, and we
Yeah.
adapt our approach.
Based on what we learned?
Got it. But let's be real, even with the best Scrum practices, challenges are inevitable. Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces of Scrum fit together, but this guide also talks about some more advanced concepts that I'm not as familiar with, like
That-
burn up and burn down charts. I know they're used for tracking progress, but I always get them mixed up.
Think of it this way. The burn down chart is all about what's left to do. It shows the work remaining over time, ideally burning down to zero by the end of the sprint. The burn up chart, on the other hand, focuses on what's been accomplished. It tracks the work completed and shows how much the product has burned up towards completion.
So the burn down chart is like a visual countdown, and the burn up chart highlights progress and momentum.
Got it. What about velocity? I know it's an important metric in Scrum, but I'm not entirely sure what it measures.
Velocity helps you understand the team's sustainable pace. It's not about pushing them to work faster, but about getting a realistic sense of their average output over several sprints. This helps with planning and forecasting. You can estimate how much work the team can likely handle in future sprints
Yeah.
based on their past performance.
So it's about finding that sweet spot
Mhm.
between ambition and what's actually achievable. Now, you mentioned the confidence vote earlier. How does that play into the Scrum Master's role? The confidence vote is a simple but powerful tool for gauging the team's buy-in and identifying potential risks early on. After discussing the sprint goals and any potential challenges, each team member votes on their level of confidence in achieving success. If there's hesitation or doubt, it's a signal to dig deeper and address those concerns before they become major roadblocks.
I can see how that would create a more open and transparent environment. It's like taking the team's temperature before diving into the sprint. Now, this guide also mentions other Agile frameworks besides Scrum, like Kanban. Is it important to be familiar with those as well, even if I'm specifically interviewing for a Scrum Master role?
Showing that you understand the broader Agile landscape
Mm-hmm.
definitely demonstrates a deeper level of knowledge. While Scrum is very structured and time-boxed, Kanban is more about continuous flow. It focuses on visualizing the workflow, limiting work in progress, and optimizing efficiency.
So Scrum is like a well-choreographed dance, while Kanban is more like a jazz improvisation, both beautiful in their own way.
That's a great analogy. And the choice of which framework to use really depends on the project and the team's working style. But being able to articulate the differences shows you've thought critically about Agile methodologies.
Okay, so I'm feeling pretty good about my understanding of these concepts, but how do I actually bring them to life in the interview? I don't want to sound like I'm just reciting definitions from a textbook.
That's where the STAR method comes in. It's a framework for structuring your answers to behavioral interview questions, which are common in Scrum Master interviews.
STAR method. Tell me more.
STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. It helps you tell a compelling story that showcases your skills and experience. Instead of just saying, I'm a good communicator, you can describe a specific situation where your communication skills made a difference.
So, for example, I could talk about a time when I had to resolve a conflict within a Scrum team.
Exactly. You could describe the situation, the task you were facing, the actions you took to resolve the conflict, and the positive result that came from your efforts. It makes your response much more memorable and impactful.
I like it. It's all about showing, not just telling. Okay, I feel much more confident now about tackling those interview questions. But there's one more thing I'm wondering about. What about those politically charged discussions that sometimes come up in Agile teams? How do you navigate those tricky waters as a Scrum Master?
That's a great question, and it's something every Scrum Master needs to be prepared for.
Yeah.
Agile teams are diverse, and sometimes those diverse viewpoints can clash.
Yeah, it seems like fostering a respectful and inclusive team environment is crucial, especially when, the strong opinions start to surface.
It's a balancing act.
Yeah.
You want to encourage healthy debate and diverse perspectives, but at the same time, You need to make sure those discussions stay productive and respectful.
So how do you strike that balance? What are some concrete strategies
Yeah.
that a Scrum Master can use to navigate those, potentially explosive conversations?
Well, one thing this guide emphasizes is setting clear ground rules for communication
Yeah.
right from the start. It's about creating a culture of respect where everyone feels safe to share their opinions
Yeah.
without fear of judgment or personal attacks.
So setting the expectation that it's okay to disagree, but it's not okay to be disrespectful. What happens if a discussion starts to get a little bit heated? How do you intervene without taking sides or shutting down the conversation completely?
Sometimes all it takes is a gentle redirect. Remind the team of their shared goals and the bigger picture. Shift the focus back to delivering value for the product and the customer.
Yep.
You can also try reframing the conversation in a more neutral way.
I'm guessing leading with questions can be helpful in those situations.
Absolutely. Instead of letting opinions clash, encourage the team to explore different perspectives. Ask things like, what are the pros and cons of each approach? Or what data do we have to support these different viewpoints?
Right. That takes the heat out of the discussion and encourages a more objective, data-driven approach.
Another powerful technique is to simply encourage active listening. Often heated arguments stem from misunderstandings or a lack of empathy. When team members truly listen to each other, it can help bridge those divides and create a more understanding and collaborative environment.
It's about creating that space for people to feel heard, even if you don't agree with everything they're saying.
Exactly. Sometimes just feeling heard is enough to de-escalate a situation. But of course, there are times when you might need to intervene more directly. If a discussion becomes disruptive or disrespectful, you need to address that behavior head on.
How do you do that without making someone feel like they're being singled out or attacked?
It's about addressing the behavior, not the person. You can acknowledge their passion while also setting clear boundaries. For example, you might say something like, I appreciate your perspective, but I'm not comfortable with the language being used. Let's keep our conversation respectful and focused on finding a solution that works for the team.
It's like saying, we can disagree without being disagreeable.
Exactly. And remember, your ultimate goal as a Scrum Master is to create a positive and productive environment for everyone. That means fostering a culture of trust and psychological safety, where people feel comfortable taking risks and being vulnerable.
This has been incredibly helpful. I feel much better equipped to handle those challenging conversations. It seems like the Scrum Master role goes beyond just the technical aspects of Scrum.
Absolutely. It's about leadership, communication, and creating a positive and supportive team culture. Those are the qualities that make a truly exceptional Scrum Master.
Well, you've given me a lot to think about. I feel much more prepared for my interview now. Thank you so much for sharing your insights.
My pleasure. Remember, confidence is key. You've got the knowledge. Now go out there and rock that interview.
I'm ready to do just that. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Scrum Master interview prep. We hope you found it valuable and insightful.
Remember, the Agile world is constantly evolving, so never stop learning and growing.
Until next time, keep diving deep.